two of them. Sorry about that. So this is going to be a 2-day workshop. In the reason why there's such a space in between is because the beading is going to be completely dependent on what kind of design that you wanted to make. So if you wanted to do something a little more elaborate, you're going to have the extra time to get it done. So there's going to be a couple things that we're going to focus on today. First, it's going to be about buying supplies and where to get it online, what to expect when it comes in. And the other part, is going to be going through our packages and the intro to beading, as well as putting together the liners. And then on Sunday, when we come back, everyone's vamp should be beaded. And then at that point, we're going to put everything together, and it should take about 2 hours tops just for the finishing stuff. So if you received one of these, your package, if you want to take some of that stuff out before we go through too much, you would have received this, and there's 2 different types of thread in here. One's a beading thread or a leather thread, depending on which color you picked. And then there's artificial sinew as well. And that's what you're going to be sewing with. Anytime you're doing sewing of this kind, do not use thread to do it, because what's going to happen is that because you're doing a hand stitch, it's going to slip. And when it slips, then you're going to start getting holes and that kind of stuff. So this is actually wax thread. And what that does is when you pull it tight and you seals, it dries and it stays exactly where you want it to be, so that nothing's slipping, nothing is where it shouldn't be. You also received a bag full of needles, and these are actually different sizes. It may not look like it to the naked eye, but when you open them up, you're going to see the skinniest needles. And sorry, I'm not sure if the camera's going to catch this very well. This is the skinniest one, and this is an actual needle. So this is something that would puncture. But your other needles are leather needles. And if you look very closely at the tip, you're going to notice that it's a 3-blade side at the tip. It's not a blunt point. And what that's for is specifically for piercing leather. So your largest one is a size 5. You'll have a medium one. This is a size 7. And then you'll have 2 smaller ones that are still leather needles, and those are size 9s. In each of your kits, your beads should be a size 10. Most of the time when we're doing work like this, it'll be a size 10 or a size 11, depending on how intricate of the beadwork you want. A size 11 is smaller. It may not go through this needle. You'll have to use the short beading needles to do the beadwork in that case. But I prefer to use the leather needle so that you're not bending as many needles, you're not breaking them. It's a lot easier to work with.
So Robin, I'm just going to interrupt for a quick second. I was just going to close this baby door.
Yeah. Sorry, noisy for 1 second. They leave me alone. Stop touching me. It's getting a little dark here too. Okay, so also in your kit, you received these pieces. There should be 4 of them. And what these are is the lining. And these are just to go inside. Your moccasins, you received 4 of the exact same pieces. This is the part that we're calling the vamp. And this is the piece that you will be beading. You'll notice on the opposite side, it's a little harder to tell with the black leather ones, but you'll notice on the one side, you'll see drawings, that's your rough side. And on your other side, that's where your beadwork's actually gonna be. Then you received either 2 of these or 1 long piece that you're going to have to cut in half. And these are just part of going around the toe. I know my lady in Flin Flon, yours is together. You're going to have to separate it at some point. And then you received a random piece that just doesn't look like it makes sense. That's actually going to be for your heel when you're combining it together. And I'll show you what I mean later. And then you received your beads. And if you're in Thompson, if you run out at any point this weekend, let me know. I'll drop it off. If you're out of town, I'm really sorry if I didn't give you enough. It'll just depend on what kind of design that you're planning on doing. So those are your kits. If you're missing anything again, let me know as soon as you can. And then we're actually I'm going to give this kit to you. And Sorry, 1 second. And then we're going to go over some of the online ordering stuff. Okay. Okay, so another thing I want you guys to kind of go through and think about is what kind of design of beadwork you wanted to do. If you wanted to stick with something very simple, we can do a diamond pattern. It's a very simple, easy traditional style beadwork. It's just involving straight lines. If you are thinking of something else, and I did not include anything because I wasn't sure, you can print these flies. You can print off clip art, which would be something like this. Can't really see it very well there. And these are more traditional designs that you can do. You can do the flower without the leaf if you choose not to. You can do this fly, it loves me, like a hummingbird pattern. You can do, these are all traditional patterns that I printed out. Anything like this, you can do a freehand and then just a basic flower. This one I've done numerous times and I noticed it's really hard to do the second leaf. And then at any time, if you're making moccasins later and there's a very particular intricate pattern, you can actually take your vamp into ET blades and they'll embroider it for you. So at that point, you don't need to do any beading at all. It's all an embroidery. I did that for my nieces and nephews' hockey mitts because the logo for Woboden was the Woboden Stingers. It's too small for me to bead. So I actually cut the leather, I marked the bad side, put it in, tell him what size I wanted it. He embroidered it on leather. I put the mitts together and boom, they were done. So it takes a lot of time out of there, but it's usually about $10 to $15, I want to say, per pair. So then you have to have that extra expense and then you're not beating it either, right? So we're going to go over the basics. That's all I'm asking now is if you can be mindful of what kind of pattern you wanted to do. You can do a freehand flower, anything you want, and then have your colors to match. Oh, do you need me to be louder? Okay, I'll work on that. I use my big girl voice. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I brought. For any of my Thompson people, if you guys even wanted to come in, sorry. No worries. Daryl's here. So if you guys wanted to come in and look at any of the stuff, feel any of the furs, anything like that, you're more than welcome to come down. Even if you don't want to sit in person in class, you can just come in, have a look at anything. If there's more beads that you needed or swapped out, you can come in as well. I'm gonna get Andrea, can you grab this so I can show this? All right. We started from this side. No one Starbucks, they're not a sponsor. These are some of the linings. And sorry, I just need to grab the button. These are some of the linings that you can order. This is a synthetic, so this is not an animal product. And I'm sorry for the making of this video, all of the animals were killed today. Every one of them. I'm sorry. This is a synthetic lining, and it's more of a, it's really soft and fuzzy. It's more for a lightweight, like a moccasin or a summer moccasin or that kind of thing. Children's mitts, if you're not too worried about them getting extremely cold, this is something you would use. These, on the other hand, are called sheared sheepskin. And this is an actual hide. So if you're ever making a pair of mufflocks or moccasins or mittens and you want them to be more waterproof and more durable, you're going to want to order a sheepskin shearling because it has this extra layer to keep you insulated. And this will keep you very warm. This is the same thing. The only difference is it's a bit of a thinner version of the other one. I know it's awkward with the camera.
Yeah, sorry. I am not a cameraman.
I'm not too sure. They said it's a different variety. Okay. Yeah, so this one has been sheared to be this thickness. This one is unsheared and it's just shorter. I think it's a different type of sheet. Now, this here is the Alaskan split leather. Whenever you're ordering online, you'll always notice they say Alaskan split leather. And you go down and they have a whole bunch of different colors and stuff that you can pick. This is a medium weight, a light to medium weight. But however, when you're calling in, do specify what it is for. Because this stuff looks soft and pliable, but some stuff I've ordered online shows up and it's like a piece of cardboard. It's completely useless to me and it's extremely discouraging when you're ordering, you're paying for all this shipping, it shows up and it's just completely unusable. So this, and whenever you're ordering to make a pair, I would strongly encourage you to order the minimum that you need and then add at least 20%. And the reason for that is that you can order two of the same color and when they show up, their shade's different. Because these colors and batches that they come in are in large batches. But if you happen to catch the tail end of one batch and the new one comes out, I've even had black that wasn't the same black. One looked a bit more like dark gray, and then one looked like a really rich, soft black. So you just have to be careful about what you're ordering. This is the mousse. I have it in white here. I have it in black at the table as well, and then it comes in natural. So it has an unpolished side and then a polished side. These are excellent for either doing slippers. If you're going to do, I do a lot of baby wraparounds in this. So anything for the infants and that kind of stuff, this is what I would encourage you to do.
Yeah, they should come up and, do you guys want to come up and feel them, the different qualities?
That is really good to sew, especially with the leather needle, because it punctures very easily. Okay. This is the Alaskan split. If you end up with a heavier batch of it, it tends to be a little bit more difficult to get your needle through. And this is the deer.
Come up and feel it. Come up and see and feel.
I was bugging them to do it.
Oh, okay.
This is a perfect example of ordering the exact same product and having two different colors. This is the same thing when you order it online. And they're considered the same color. But a lot comes out, you'll see a batch that comes out more yellow. The next time you order it, it comes out more gold. Yeah, it's exactly how it's dyed and just what happened, they happened to do that day. So this was from one batch, and then the next time I ordered, all of a sudden I had this. And anytime you're ordering hide, bear in mind, the thickness will not be the same throughout the entire animal. You'll have some areas that are thinner. Those are the pieces that you want to cut for your vamp so that it's easier to sew. The part of it that is a bit heavier, that's where you're going to want for the bottom of your sole. Because if you're using a really thin piece of leather for the bottom of the sole, it's going to stretch out really good. So deer hide, I would recommend only using for baby or child products. I would not recommend using a deer hide. It's very soft, it's very thin, it's going to stretch a lot, and it's going to wear really easily. So any of my baby wraparounds are made with this. Any of my adult products, I start with an Alaskan split or a mousse. I won't use deer hide for any of those. These are an idea of what kind of beads. These aren't all of my beads, but this is a pretty good chunk of them. Like I said, this would be a size 10 bead, and they're a lot bigger. And when you're doing projects with a size 10, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, but again, you're not going to get a lot of detail. When you get a size 11, I'm just going to find the strand. No, those are 11. If I can find my 11. They're kind of mixed in here. A little harder to find. And then there's these, they're called delicas. And they are a little bit longer and tubular, and they're quite a bit more expensive than a regular size 10 or 11 bead. These are size 11. The only problem is you can't really see them, but they are just a bit smaller than a size 10 to the point where you can do, like I said, finer details, but also you're not going to get that size 9 leather needle coming through. This is your sinew. This is what you're going to order. This is what it comes in. You're not obviously going to stitch with something this thick. What you're going to notice is that you're going to rip it apart and then it breaks off into strands. So when you do that, then you're able to actually have manageable pieces that you can sew with. The reason I didn't rip it apart is because it's wax. Like I said, it starts drying. So I left it together, and then when you rip it apart, you're going to notice that it is waxy. This is the thread. So this is a leather thread. Unfortunately, they were limited as to the beading thread, so you're using a leather thread. Never bother buying a cotton type thread to be able to do beadwork. It's just going to rip apart on you when it comes through the leather. A beading thread is extremely resistant, and it's a little bit thinner than a leather thread. And this is the most ideal for beading because you're going to run into issues if you have to go through the same bead and you're using a thicker thread. Like if you were to go around in a circle and you wanted to loop back through your original bead, that's going to cause some problems. So if you have black, it's a little bit thinner. If you have gold, it's a little bit thicker. Now this is the fun part. These are all the animals that I have so far. I just brought in one of each, just so you can kind of have an idea as to what to expect. Or when you're looking online and they say, you want a purple fox and it's farmed or a fuchsia, these are farmed animals. So these animals are specifically raised for their pelts on farms. They're a lot thicker. If you go up to none of it, these are the hood strips that they sew on their jackets, because it's a lot thicker and it's a lot heavier. When you go over to these, this is an Arctic fox. It's a lot thinner, it's a lot lighter. And same thing with these. These are all wild foxes. So what you're going to notice is that the skin is a bit thinner in these. You can come and show. And the fur is a little bit thinner in these. This is where our lynx is. Any of these are good for edging on moccasins. Any of them. Oh, can I flip with you?
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Now, this is an example of ordering online. You go and you spend a whole bunch of money on a wool, and you will get this. And then you say, hey, I'm going to make a pair of mitts. I want another one. So you order another wool, and they give you this. All right, so no two animals are ever going to be 100% exact. If you are having issues and you need a lot of one particular animal, I'd strongly recommend getting something dyed, because when they dye them, they're all in uniform colors. Not with the leather, more so with the fur. This is the otter. Otters are my favorite type of fur to work with and to wear. They are more water resistant. Their skin, anytime you have an animal that spends most of its life out of the water, their skin tends to get really thin. So you'll notice with the natural foxes, with the rabbits, anything like that, it's really thin, it wears really easily. When you're dealing with an otter or a beaver or a seal, the skin's very thick. They actually have to plane this while they're tanning it. And the fur tends to stay on a lot longer. This is my only Wolverine. And these guys are incredibly expensive. So if you're ever ordering one, yes. I definitely prefer to hand pick mine if you're going to spend the amount of money on something like that. And sorry, I had two colors of otters here to show you the same thing. You wanted to make a pair of mitts, so you ordered 2 otters. This is one. This will be the color of your next one. So while they're pretty close, you'll notice one's a little more red and one's a little more ashy. So you need to be a little careful. And if you're ordering online, just tell them specifically, I need 2. I need them to be as identical in color as possible. That's going to go through with the beaver. So you order one beaver and it comes out this color. You order this one, which is a little bit darker. And then you order another one because you're short, and then this one's completely ash. And these are literally all the same animal. It would just depend on which geographical region that they were trapped, what time of the year they were trapped. This is more of a middle of the winter. And I believe this is Eastern. This is Manitoba, and this would be closer towards the spring. It changes color depending on what time of the year it is. And then if you wanted a guaranteed thing, these are the sheared beaver. And this is my favorite if I wanted to do something fuzzy. This will work for liners. They're a lot more expensive than beaver, but they basically shaved this top coat down and removed all the guard hairs. So these are actually the same thing, or the same animal. It's just a different way of processing the fur. And I absolutely, this is probably the softest and the most durable if you're going for soft and durable.
This is the one I want.
And they have this in natural and they have this in black as well. And the beavers as well, they have dyed black whenever you're buying them. Then we move on to the seal skin. This is where I keep getting confused because I keep confusing them. There's two different types of seal that you can order, and you'll notice there's different types of spots. So if you look at this one, they're just kind of very vaguely a few spots. These are the ones that they're able to commercially harvest on the East Coast, from what I understand. And from what I also understand, these ones, they cannot anymore. I believe it's only the enough that are allowed to harvest these. Yeah, so these are a lot harder to get now, and they may become nearly impossible to get fairly soon. So these are actually the last of what I have. And the exact same thing, no two are alike, no spots are alike. These are completely different animals. So you'll never actually match two of them perfectly. And then these are the same one, except any animal can be dyed in any color. And that's the same thing. When I picked this one out, there is about 20 different shades of red when they were dyeing them for the seals. Some were bright red, some were darker red, this whatever they like, because it's a really deep red. And same thing with the blue. Now, that is something that I used a lot because it's cheaper. These plates, depending on which quality you buy, are about $70 to $80 per plate, and they will make you a whole bunch of slippers. I'm discontinuing using rabbit because I don't know where this is coming from, if I could be completely honest. I don't know if it's for farms in China. I don't know if they're Canadian. I don't know where it's coming from.
Okay.
And it sounds contradictory because I have a whole bunch of dead animals here, but I do care about where they come from and how they are treated. I don't have any experience with fur farms enough to decide on whether I think they're, morally okay or not. With the rabbit, I am getting away from. A lot of my stuff will still have rabbit until I run out, and then I'm switching over to using beaver and fox and basically anything else that specifically comes from Canada. But if you're ordering a rabbit plate, what I want you to look at is the difference in quality, because they grade them, they'll grade 1, 2, and 3. I'm pretty sure 1's the best and it's the most expensive. And you're wondering why, like, what do I care if it's all the same thing? It's really not. This is a low quality rabbit pelt, and this is a high quality rabbit pelt.
Can you come up to
And
the
you can
camera?
see even from me holding it, that this is more cardboardy, it's more papery.
Can you come up to the camera, Robin?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I keep talking to
Yeah, no, I know it's difficult multitask. I'm out of room,
Oh,
so I can't come any closer.
yeah, okay, sorry. So this, you'll notice it kind of melts down into my hand. It's softer, it's a bit thicker. Again, rabbit's not the most durable animal, but you can actually work with this. You can flip it over when you're making your slippers and stuff. It's not going to look weird or strange. This one is very papery, so this is a low quality. And you'll notice it just doesn't do the same Yeah, you can hear crackling. So this is the difference.
You can even see it.
When you're ordering and you notice it's a $10 difference and you're like, oh, I'll just order this. This is the difference between the two. And this is why I would recommend getting a higher quality because it's just going to be a lot easier to work with. It's going to last a bit longer. And even with the fur, it tends to pull out a little bit easier on the lower quality stuff. So I ordered this to see kind of what it would be like. And I'll use them on the upper part of baby mufflets because they're not getting a
So
lot of
little.
wear anywhere. Yeah, just a tiny little piece. But I won't use these on slippers because when you try to hold it over, you'll have these weird kind of edges and stuff, as you can even see here. And that comes onto your slipper. And then the socks they have. Ooh, this is in the back. Rabbit, this is a more expensive, but it's my kids kind of got to this one, if you can see the spots of stuff on it. And then this stuff is a lot more expensive. This is about $169 per plate. So it's double the price of the other stuff. But if you're wondering the difference, it's pretty clear. These are bleached a lot better than a natural, and they're thicker and they're softer. So that's kind of the difference between the different types of rabbit that they have.
Holy, eh?
Yeah, so it's a huge difference between thickness, fullness, and softness, and even color. The color is a little bit.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's Marilyn.
Making things.
Okay, so put the camera back.
Yeah, you can put it down there and I'll. Yeah, I'll just- There we go. All right, I gotta grab a couple things for 1 second. What is that? So first, what you're gonna do is grab your card. Yeah, these are the leather needles. Here we go.
If you ladies want to.
It is hot in here in that mask. I thought I had an extra, okay. So I'll just be 1 second. I'm just gonna cut out another pattern. I thought I had an extra, and then I didn't. Now your patterns you can get from just about anywhere online. There's some of them that are free online where it's custom made to your foot. I haven't tried one of those. I just ordered a whole bunch of different sizes. Either your 5 or 7, either of the larger 2 needles. This is not going to be important. It's whatever you're most comfortable with because you're just sewing your liner. We're not doing anything spectacular. How's the light? Looks a little bit dim there. I got that 9.5 inch. I wish I knew your supplies so I could help out better. Garbage. It is warm in here. So if you guys have any more questions about ordering, if you're not sure, just shoot me a message and let me know. Sorry, my furs I order from Bill Warb. Bill Warb furs. He's on Ross Avenue in Winnipeg. It's basically kind of a back alley that looks really sketchy. And it's a hole in the wall, and then you go in and it's literally a room, just huge studio open with fur everywhere. There's everything in there. Even if you're looking at pre-made things, they do sell pre-made stuff there as well. And believe it or not, some of my more funky furs that I wasn't sure about, I picked by hand because they even have a fur discount bin. Okay, so for example, a lot of my stuff, I recently got my fur buying license in the last couple of years. And the reason I did that was because I heard about all these trappers that were throwing out animals that they had skinned if there was any damages. If there's any damage to the fur buyers will not buy it. And unfortunately, that to me was just wasting product when I'm sitting here and spending $700 on a wolf or $300 on a fox or whatever the case was. So what I did was got my fur buying license so that I could buy these damaged pelts from the trappers and then I would ship them out to get tanned. So it's encouraging trappers to hopefully stop throwing away animals that are damaged. Because when I'm cutting them up and I'm using them, I don't need it to be completely perfect and intact when I get it. So I've even been buying a half a wolf. For example, if the top half was damaged and it's no good, that's fine, because I'll just use the bottom half. I send it out to get tanned, it comes back to me, and then I'm cutting it up and using the product. So yeah, so I go to Bill Warp Furs and I hit up the discount bin. I see what's on sale. It's literally the only place in the world I like to shop besides the beef store. All right. So you have one of each side here. So what you're going to do is you're going to flip it, and this is the way that you're going to be sewing it. So you're going to take your thread, your sinew, rip it apart, and you're going to put in a piece. And if you're wondering about thickness because it's hard to tell, you want it similar to a piece of dental floss, because this is pretty well the exact same thing. So that's the thickness that you're going for. Now, the first thing you're going to do, if it's not marked, is find the middle by folding it in half and then going through the top like this. Is that right? So it's right smack in the middle. And then you're going to do the same with this. This one's marked, so perfect. And you're going to go through this. And what I want you to do is just pin it there. I use thread to pin mine. You can use a pin if you have a safety pin. The safety pins will not work on the leather because it won't pierce it. You'll just bend a whole bunch of safety pins trying to do it. So for me, it's easier just to, I'm just trying to get another. Whatever's manageable for you. All of your pieces are too long. I'll tell you that now. And if you're not sure about length, for example, like I still have this on a spool, so I'll break it apart. I won't cut the entire length. I will take a piece, I will pull it as long as I need it, and then cut it there. And then when I go back, I can start on a different part so that you're kind of working it down. It's not all the same length. Okay. And then now we're going to take this corner here. I don't know if you can see that. Are you?
Oh, sorry, give me the camera. I'm just, there's one customer that can't get in.
Okay.
So I just have to email her the link. Oh, there she is. Here.
Oh, we found her? Perfect.
Sorry.
Where are you? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take this corner in the top here, and you'll see on the other side that it's been marked. That little mark there, you're putting that corner to that mark. Okay, and we're going to secure it there. Guess I could have numbered them too. That might have made it a little bit easier. 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. And then we're doing the same with the opposite side. Taking this, we're going to here, the mark that's on the back. And then we're tying it together. I wouldn't worry too much about your sinew because there's more than enough to do this project and maybe even a couple more. What I was afraid of was shorting people. And then you can use those supplies later. Okay, so when you've tucked it together, sorry, I still can't see.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to make you the speaker view, but I think somebody's got their mic muted.
There we go. So when you put it together, or when you pin the 3 parts, this is what it looks like. Part 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Can you show that again? It was on the camera.
Oh, the camera was on? Oh, there we go. So this corner went to this mark. You have the mark on the opposite side. And then this is what it looks like. Sorry, you just go all the way through. Like into, not very far. I'd say like maybe a 1/4 inch. Yeah, a 1/4 inch. And then you're going to tuck. So it's kind of giving you an idea already of what we're going to be doing. If you can envision it.
Most people only have black fur, that's okay, right?
I just have black thread in my pack. So this white fur with black thread, yeah, that will be fine. The color of your fur is different than the color of your leather, but whenever you are doing that, you always sew with the color of your leather. Okay, so even if you have a black piece of leather with white fur, you're going to use a black piece of string, or sorry, of thread to sew it up. And the reason for that is that you will notice it on the leather. Once you have the fur on, the fur is so fluffy, it's going to cover the stitches. You're not going to be able to see the thread at all once it's flipped over. Just I'm going to go ahead and tuck the other one. Just to make sure. And again, you want the fuzzy part to the fuzzy part. You want this flat part on the outside. Fuzzy to fuzzy. Facing each other. Okay, so I'm going to tuck my other one. Find the middle. Put the middle on here. And those together. All right, for anyone wondering about the utility knife, we're not going to be using it today. That's something I'll talk about too while we're doing this. Whenever you are cutting fur, you are not going to use scissors, ever. Do not use scissors to cut your fur because it's cutting fur at the same time as it's cutting the skin. And I'll show you what I mean. So a lot of you got one piece of fur like this. The only exception was the order with the brown fox fur, and that's because I had to take it from 2 separate sides of the fox. You have one piece. This is for both of your slippers. So you're actually going to be cutting this in half. So if you even have a really sharp steak knife or a utility blade, the way that you're going to be cutting it is you're just going to be cutting the skin. You are not going to be touching this part at all. Now, when you do that, when you cut through the skin, you'll feel it pop through, and you're going to trace it all the way down. And then when you pull it apart, there will be very minimal fur loss at that point. You're not going to lose a whole bunch of fur by doing it this way. I made that mistake with the rabbit plate by cutting with scissors. And what I did was created a jagged edge at the bottom because I was cutting the fur as well as the skin. So if you're wondering about your utility knife, that's going to be something we do on Sunday. And that's just going to be to cut this piece. That is all you need it for. So if you don't have one today, it's not a big deal. We will deal with that on Sunday. All right. And if you stab yourself with these leather needles, it hurts about 3 times as much as a regular needle. You have been warned. This is going to be the hardest part, is especially with beating with them. Okay, so once your pieces are pinned, there we go. All ready for the next part. Now, get another fresh piece of sinew, because this is where we're going to be doing the sewing. And you just want it long enough to be manageable. Not too long, not too short. Just an arm's length. Now, I sew with a single thread. My cousin from Norrie House, she doubles hers. I can't stand doubling it because I notice when I'm sewing, what happens if it's doubled is that you create this pressure point right here at the base of the needle. So what I notice is that sometimes, depending on how things go when I'm sewing through leather, what happens is that it frays because it's on the same spot. And then eventually it breaks through, and then I have to start all over again with a new thread. But for some reason, it works for her. With me, when I'm sewing with a single thread, what that means is that I have a piece here. So when I pull through and stitch, it frays a little bit on that part, and then I move it a little bit each time so that I'm not fraying my sinew.
And can you get this sinew in that
I believe Needles Eye does sell it. I'm pretty sure they do. They have before, but again, you can buy, sorry, I'll give you a list of my suppliers. Bill Warb is where I buy my leather thread. You can buy some needles from there. I'm not crazy about their leather needles because I don't find them to be as sharp. And that's where I get all of my fur and my leathers from. My beads come from Dakota Beads. They are located in Manitoba. The woman there, she's extremely reasonable to deal with. She has a Facebook page as well. She gives you deals for bulk orders as well. So if you order 10, I believe they're $4 each for a full hank of beads. And she has basically every size, cut, color that you could possibly want under the sun. And they go down to as small as a size 13. So that's for really, really fine detail work. If you're ever wanting to get it super ambitious, I don't bead with size 13 because I think people that do that are something else. That's more incredible work. Yeah. Now, let me see about the best way to do this. Yes, there we go. All right. So we're going to go right in the middle first. And we're just going to do one stitch. Okay. So anyone, you've seen moccasins before where there's that bunching that's happening at the toe. That's actually what we're going to create. So we're going to go a regular stitch width apart, and then we're going to create a little kind of tuck here, if you can see that. So you're going to tuck it just a little bit. It's not going to be a huge difference. It's hard to see here, but it will be bubbled out. And then you're going to go through it again, and that's going to actually secure that tuck. You're intentionally not sewing it perfectly straight together. You're intentionally bunching this over and then tucking it there. Whenever you're doing them, it should be around 4 to 5 tucks. And you're just doing it until this edge lines up together. So we're going to take that, tuck it, and then we're going through. And then we're going to go through it twice to make sure that it stays. If you only do 1 stitch through, you'll notice that the tuck will let go a lot of the times. Why am I stuck? Here we go. These fluffies. So that's 2 tucks, and you can see how it's actually starting to slowly line up here where you can sew it straight. That's exactly what you're looking for. Going to tuck it over again. And stitch the same spot twice to hold it there. So you can see there's bubbles on the opposite side. And then this side is straight where the vamp is. So I'm almost there. It looks like I need 1 more. It's just like a wrap type stitch. Yeah. So it's just going through, straight through, hold that tuck that you want or where you want it to, and then go straight through again. It's just a straight wrap around stitch. Oh, knocking my camera around here. So now you can see for mine here, it's pretty lined up at this point. There's a few tucks here on the other side, and then now it's lining up a lot nicer. So once that happens, all you're going to do is just a straight stitch all the way through. And every few stitches here, if you can, go back through. I'll show you, put it through. We're going to wrap this back part of the thread around the needle and pull it, and that's going to lock your stitch in place. So if you were to just keep going straight, 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 there's a good chance it will stay, but the off chance it doesn't, every 3 to 4 stitches, you're going to want to lock in there so that they're not going anywhere. So that was about 3 stitches. I'm going to take the back end of this, wrap around the needle, and lock that in there. And then my stitches are going nowhere. I still haven't decided who I'm making this pair for. I might just throw this one in inventory. Now I forgot to bring my thinner liner, but the liner that you have is a medium to a heavy weight that's in your kits. There is a thinner liner if you want it to be for more of a summer slipper, or if you wanted to do a child's, you do have thinner options than that. And that you can even pick up at the Needles Eye here as well, or the Warps as well. They have light and medium weight. Try to avoid using any other types of fabric for this. I've run into situations where they ran out of the thin liner for the infant size. So I tried using different types of fabric and even faux fur, and it does not work. All it does is make a huge mess. And yes. So instead, I just order it online if it's not available. Now, the liner is where we're starting, because the beautiful part is that you will never see this again. So if it's not the prettiest, that is a non-issue. go. And then sew a few stitches towards the end. And tie it up. Tie a knot. The funniest part about when I first started was that I could not tie a knot to save my life. And it was so horrible. And that was actually what took me the longest to learn, was how to tie a knot. You want it to be a big enough knot and tie it around so many times to make sure that it's not going to go back through your material. Sorry? Yeah. So when you're done, it should look like this, where this part was straight and this part was tucked.
Okay.
Yeah, so those were the big tucks I was
Yeah.
talking about. And then it got smaller and then it's just a straight edge. Yeah, until it straightens out. You're only tucking the toe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then once it straightens out, then you just show it straight.
Okay, but you're still wrapping it.
Yeah, it's still wrapping it and then locking it in by wrapping it around the needle an extra time. Okay. So it looks completely flat on this side, almost flat. And then on the opposite side, you can kind of see where those tucks were. And then straight here. Okay. Then we are going to do the other side. And when you're doing this, you always, always, always start from the center. It will not work if you go from the edge inwards, because you're going to end up with some big bubbles in there at some point. You having trouble with the fluff? Okay. So I want to do my other side. And again, we need to start from the center. So I'm left-handed. So what I'm going to do is push this over to make a tuck like my other ones. And then I'm going to sew it from the opposite side. So when I go this way, I'm going in from the bottom instead of going through the top, like I did when I was doing it the other direction. I'm going to use this needle, pull up a big tuck, and then we go through again. And go through it a couple of times so that it stays there. Now, I know it's eyeballing this because and that's not quite lined up, so I'll do one more small one so that they match. And then we're going straight across, just going through and wrapping it around. Then every few stitches, wrapping thread around it and pull so that it's locking right in. How are you guys making out? We'll find out. That looks really which, sorry? Well, it's the lining. That's the beautiful part about it. As long as it's semi-symmetrical, you're not going to see it again. This is going to go inside. So that's why we start stitching. So another thing we were talking about earlier too was the sizing. And if you weren't sure, you always order a half size smaller. And the reason being is that these will stretch no matter what. So I'm a size 8.5, and I've even stretched out a pair of size 7s. They were uncomfortable for a while, but they did eventually stretch out to my size. Yeah, so you're going to be able to trim them down too. So these sizes that you have right now, like these cut templates, are for a specific size. But when we go to do the heel, if you're thinking that they're a little bit long, that's the edge that you're going to trim. Yeah. So these aren't 100%. Yeah. Oh. Oh. Sorry, I'm trying to. Yeah, it'll be a little different when everyone's in person too. Then you can kind of take the time, walk around, make sure everyone's figured it out. One thing to bear in mind is that you don't want them to be too big when you're making these tucks. And the reason why is you will feel them. They'll be very bunchy. They'll feel kind of uncomfortable. So you try to want to make them even, and you want to make them symmetrical. So when you are finished, this is where is your camera? There we go. That's kind of what it's going to look like. See, so mine's not perfect. It's not super pretty. Oh, and that's fine. You can see where it's actually in the shape of a toenail for your foot. This next part, when we do the heel, is actually when you're going to adjust it. So if these are for you, you're going to put them on. I'll show you this in a second. First, we're going to do the other side as well. So I'm gonna start back with this one again. And again, I'm left-handed, so this might look backwards from you. I think that might be an issue too, is most people are right-handed, I'm left-handed. So when I'm sewing this way, I sew. Does it? Okay, perfect. I think it's like flipping it backwards. So when I'm sewing this way, I'm sewing through the top because that's the way that I always sew left to right. And then when I'm sewing this other half, it's from the bottom up. So that's why it kind of looks like I'm flipping it over. And that's only to make sure that because I can't physically sew it this way. I'm only good at sewing left to right. So if you can sew from the top on both sides, that's fine. If you have to do it from the bottom, both sides, that's fine. If you're doing it like me, where you start at the top and then finish on the bottom, that's fine too. Oh, and that's the first time I stabbed myself today, so we're good. I hate thimbles. They're not for me. I have a really hard time using them. Thimble? Yeah. I can't stand them. So actually, even now, I've been doing some work. You can kind of see on the camera. Where are you? Yeah, the tips of my fingers there, where they look a bit damaged, they are. I just finished another order. And come Christmas time, I usually can't feel the tips of my fingers. Here, I'm making that tuck, going through, and then going through the same spot again. If it gets really bad, then what I'll use is a piece of leather and a piece of hockey tape, and hockey tape it around, and that seems to be working pretty good for me. So that's 2. There's 3. I'm glad. I wasn't sure too, because the last beading workshop I did, I realized I'm left-handed and things might look backwards, but I think it was the same deal where because of the camera, it looked like I was teaching the proper way. Yes. The majority, the way that. Have speakers? Yeah, with a little bit of mood music for sewing. And if anyone's still not sure after this, if you want to make another pair, if you want another kit, just let me know and I can do up another one. I know one of our participants wanted to do baby ones. So I gave her the proper pieces for it, but I'm really hoping to do a wraparound class at some point as well for the babies. But we will give that some time. I also wanted to do a mitts workshop at some point before it gets too cold outside. Because after October, I'm basically swamped until January. Every year it's the same. Mitts also are a lot easier for gift giving because they're small, medium, and large, and extra large. That's it. And there's no size 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for women's, right? There we go. This one. Side is done again. There we go. Now, the only unfortunate part about this fall is that if you come to a class, there's a chance you might get followed around with the camera a little bit too. They might be, APCN might be following the company I work for and doing a docu-series about it. So part of that's talking to the crew members and what they do in their personal lives. Hopefully they don't get too personal, but yeah, so we'll see how that goes. It's still very new. They haven't started filming yet, so we're not quite sure exactly how that's going to play out. I think they'll stay away from Thompson. I think they're more interested in our operations in Nepal. Okay, so again, if you're coming in from the bottom, it's a little bit easier because you're just pushing this over with your thumb to create the right size tuck so that these look to be the same size. And then you're going through in the bottom. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to finish this side on mine. I'm going to step out for a quick second to let you guys get caught up, and then we'll answer any questions about this part before we keep going. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think I'm still well over 6 feet away from you because I'm right hanging out next to this camera. I thought I was gonna sit the whole time, but I just don't feel like that's working. Oh, it should be fine. It's just, it's hard getting, like, this is such a close-up view, right? Like, there's not a lot of, yeah. And that was the same as the, like, the beadwork course that we did last time too, right? The earrings and keychains.
Yeah.
It was all kind of close up. No one needs to be staring at my double chins while they're sewing. You can kind of see what the hands are doing. I gotta at least get a manicure next time, so at least. Sorry? What a which?
A leather 9.
A leather 9 will go through the size 10 beads, yes. That's why everyone has size 10, and they're larger, easier to work with. So I felt for, you know, your first workshop, that would be the best idea. If you wanted to do an 11, you can, but there's a good chance those size 9s won't fit through. Yeah, they'll say on them, some of the tubes will say size 11. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll actually show you the needles that I've been buying. Okay, so when we're done,
Yeah.
this is what, no, this is what you should have. You should have 2, they're kind of similar, they don't have to be perfect, again. Yeah, but that kind of gives you an idea of where the toe, everything goes. And yeah. I will leave those there. I'll grab these needles so I can show you them. That's fine, I just needed one. These are the ones that I buy. On the screen, it's backwards, but they're called John James. They're Glovers. If you buy a big pack of them, they tend to be a little more expensive. They're going to be about $10 or $11, but you get 25 needles per pack, and that's going to last you a long time. These are a size 7, and then they have them in a 5 and a 7. Finding them in a 9 is extremely difficult at times. You either have to order them online through Amazon, or you can use the Arctic Trading Post in Churchill and see if they have any. But I basically cleaned out Thompson when Barb shut down the Trading Post here. I have about 20 packs of needles because I just didn't want to have to worry about finding them. I also recommend the John James for the short beading needles, if you can. If you're in a pinch, they do sell these at the needle side here. But the only issue that I have is that the head on them is a little bit smaller than the John James. So it's a little bit harder, especially if people are using the leather thread. They're really hard to thread. You kind of have to force the thread. Okay, I'll be back in 2 shapes. Ooh, it's sweaty in here. Okay, so is everyone pretty well? Yeah. Hash it out. Oh, for the neon pink, I only need one bag. I only need one of these. The other one, yeah, for sure. And I can order more of that color too, if you like it. All right, so if you're not quite done yet, just need your attention for a minute to talk about this heel. Just gonna trim this edge off because it was on the edge. So it's flat. Now, this is the time when you're going to double check your size. If these are for you, this is the perfect time to do it. You're gonna stick your foot in here and you're gonna put your heel all the way to the end. And I'll show you, my foot's not pretty, okay, but we'll go through.
We got a big space here.
Oh, my wonderful foot here. Okay, so we're gonna put it in. This pattern's a little bit narrow. I think I cut my own size for a size 7. And then this is where you're gonna see if there's any extra on the back. And you want it to be snug. You don't want it to be, oh, sorry, that's my phone, I'll turn it off. So for here, even looking at my heel and a size 8, it looks like there's a ½ inch too long. No, that's just my phone.
Okay.
So it's about this much too. Now bear in mind, whatever you do to this liner, you're going to do to the other pieces that are the same shape. So we're going to cut off that much here. Now, if you'll notice, I got this pattern to be able to cut these pieces. And what I noticed is that they were a bit too narrow for my foot because I tend to have a wider foot and a lot of people, I feel like, have a wider foot. So you'll notice that on some of the ones that are cut, they have this line. And then some of them, they're a little bit bigger than what the pattern is. And that's exactly what the problem that I was having, is that they were just too narrow. So this will be about a narrow size 8 or a narrow size 7. So that was the issue that I was having. Hopefully nobody else has any sizing issues. Hope for love. Sorry, guys. Now, we're going to take another piece of thread. This one doesn't necessarily have to be that long. I'll make mine a little bit longer because I just want to make sure that I have enough. There we go. As long as they're manageable, anything longer than your arm's length, you'll find even when you're doing the beadwork, it'll tend to get tangled, especially with the beading thread. If you're using the leather thread, if you have it in tan, the polyester threads tend to not get tangled as easily. They will get tangled if they're long enough, but you want no more than an arm's length worth of thread at any given time, regardless of what you're doing. Yeah, you can use a heavier duty, not necessarily thicker polyester thread. And if you're ever just testing them, just do a pull test. If they pull and they're not ripping the way cotton does, don't use polyester cotton blend either. Stay away from that because those are just going to fray every single time you sew through the leather. They're going to fray. That was one of my biggest problems. Okay, so now we're going to be doing the heel. So what we're going to start with, I'm actually going to turn this camera around a little bit. Sorry, so that I'm actually speaking to you guys who are here as well, instead of having my back turned to you. Okay, so we're going to start at the top. This will be the top of the shoe. This will be the top. This will be the bottom. So we're going to put these two together, and that's where we're going to start stitching. And you're going to work your way down to the heel, and don't get too far ahead because we're going to have to cut this piece at the bottom. So just whipping it around.
So you just cut off the excess, right?
Yeah, whatever excess that you have, cut it off, but keep that piece because you're going to want to know how much to cut off the other side, and you're also going to want to know how much to cut off the leather as well. The sewing part generally isn't the longest part about making these. It's the beadwork that tends to take the longest depending on what you're planning on doing. So if you see here now, I've got about 1 inch to the bottom. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put my thumb here, my whole thumbnail, and I'm going to cut in, oh, a little bit too far there, oops, and this way. So I basically just cut a square out of the heel, okay? So when you take that part out, this is how you're going to line it up. I'm hoping that it shows through on the camera. So I'm going to sew it to the bottom of here now. And it's just a small square. So when you undo your square, this is about how big it looks. If you can use reference to my thumbnail, it's 2 thumbnails that you're removing from the bottom when it's folded in half. Okay, so when I sew to the bottom and I'm out here now, I'm going to put this way and sew this seam. So you're making a small T is basically what's going on here. So I'm here, I'm going to go from the middle now. And I'm going to sew it to this edge first. So even if you cut it a little bit too much, you can just sew it right to the end and it's fine. Like I said, this is the liner. So it doesn't need to look that pretty. And then I'm going to go back, sewing all the way across. Like I said, it's about the size of your fingernail. And I'm just going to sew, make my way back across to the end. And then put a nice big knot again so that it doesn't come through. The stuff that you're using is a synthetic liner. There are holes in it. They are not waterproof at all. All right. So what I've done is I basically made the heel. So it's a little T. So this is where exactly how your slipper lining is done. And that's to get the heel done. I hope that makes sense. Now, when we do the leather part, it's basically gonna be the exact same thing, except we're adding a little bit more to it. But it's just to show you that there's not, because it's a two-piece, there's not too much sewing that's involved. When we do the baby wraparounds, there's actually more sewing in a baby wraparound than there is in the slippers. Quite a bit more, because it ends up being a four-piece. So again, we're going to fold this in half, and then we're going to start from the top. One for today. Yeah, sure. Sorry, I grab my mask here.
I know we started practically an hour late,
Yeah,
so I'm just gonna ask like the participants if they're like, you know. just
if they're okay for another half hour.
Yeah.
Well, all we're going to go into next is the basics to do the beadwork onto the leather. And then at that point, you guys are welcome to go, like take it home, do what you want then, because that's all I was going to do until the time expired anyway. All I wanted to do was worry about sewing the liners, going through all of the supplies and what to expect when you're ordering, and then the basic of the beadwork. The rest of the beadwork is going to be more of a homework project. So, because like I said, it can take upwards of 8 hours to be able to do a set of vamps, depending on how big of a design you want. So again, I'm taking this at the end of the heel. I'm putting my thumb there because that's how big of a piece I want to get rid of. Hopefully I don't overcut it this time. I'm going to cut down. And then I'm going, oh, didn't do it deep enough this time. And then I'm going to do it across, and it's just a square. Like this. So when you unfold it, it looks like that. And we're going to sew to the bottom. Of course, giving people homework on a weekend, eh?
Yeah, it's still recording, so that's good. So I should hopefully have that video out.
And then flop it over. This is sewn to the end, and then you're going to go this way, and it's going to create that T. So that's what how we're making them. Yeah, it's Sunday at 2:30, I believe is the next one. Yeah, that ate up a lot of time waiting for technical problems. Maybe we'll try to log in 15 minutes early on my phone or something, and then we'll make sure it works. And there you go. There's your heel. And you just made possibly your first set of liners. Take it off. Now I need to find a pattern. All right, so I'm going to be doing this pattern. If you find a pattern and you're pretty fond of it, but it might be a little bit too big for you, just cut off the bottom part, anything that you don't want, or get rid of a flower or whatever you want. You don't have to do exactly what is on here. You can kind of do what you want. So what we're going to do is this. So when I was talking about you needing paper, if you wanted to just freestyle a diamond pattern, that's going to be a lot easier. You're just going to do straight lines. If you want to do an actual design, either way, you're going to need a piece of paper on the back of your leather. So this I'm using is a piece of polished mousse. The piece that I got, there was actually a bunch of marks on the polished side. So I'm going to be using this side. Actually, I think I have a better piece at home. Yeah, so you can see where it was damaged here. So I'm going to use the unpolished side. And you can use either side that you want. So the way that I'm doing this is I'm going to put this here. Always make sure it actually fits on your vamp first of all. And then when I want you to envision this too, I want you to imagine that this doesn't exist. This third of the bottom does not exist. And the reason why I'm saying that is when you flip your fur over, it's going to cover whatever you have here anyway. Okay, so if you bead all the way up to the edge, I mean, it looks really pretty, but the moment you flip that fur over, you're sitting there saying, well, I just did all of that for nothing. So only focus about the top 2/3 towards the toe. Anything beyond here, especially if you ordered the fox fur, it's going to flop over anyway. So you'll notice a lot of designs, when you lift up the fur, there's nothing there. That's why, because they're just not going to fit on there. So for example, with this looks beautiful on here. If I wasn't going to use a fur trim, this would be perfect. I would beat it all the way to the edge. But because I am, I'm going to cut it off here at the bottom of this flower. And I'm only going to bead the flowers towards the toe. I'm going to put my other piece of paper behind it. And that's the design that I'm doing. So when you're stitching, you're sewing through this. Okay. So we're going to get our needle set up first. If you guys are ready, you're going to take your 2 size 9 leather needles, and they are the smallest needles that you have. And you need 2. The type of beading that I do is the 2 needle method. There is a 1 needle method. I do not know how to do. I've heard it's much quicker. No worries. The smallest. Right there, right here. Yeah. Okay. So you are going to thread those two size 9 leather needles. Now this pattern's the same thing, pretty well the exact same thing you'd use for a muck hook as well. The only difference is what you're doing to the top of it. So if you wanted to turn a pair of slippers or have a pair of slippers into a muck hook, then you would just add, you would take the distance around here and the distance of the height that you wanted it for, cut a piece of fur or canvas or whatever you're planning on using or leather to that piece, and then you would just sew it around and it would create the top, okay? So these are all the same pattern. A muck hook is really no different than what you're doing right now. It's just a little bit more sewn. Okay. There's my other size 9 needle. You put the pattern on the right, like the nice side. Yeah, whatever side is nice that you like the best, that's the side that you put the pattern on. All right, so my 2 needles have been threaded with a reasonable amount of length. Try not to use any more than what you are comfortable with handling. This is my pattern I picked. Actually, I forgot to grab my beads. I need the pink. Try these and see how it works. Going with a fuchsia pink, a green, a blue, and a white. So my middles of my flowers are going to go white. This is where we're finally spilling some beads. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from the back side, bottom, and I'm going to come up. Oh, sorry guys. And I'm going to come up through the front of my design. Now, whenever you're making circles, you start in the middle and then you work your way out. If you're filling in a large pattern, you do the outlining first and then you start filling it in. But because I'm doing the center of flowers, I'm going to put one bead and I'm just going to go straight back through. And it's going to sit like that. So you can see it's on its side, it's just hanging out there. Now, the next row I'm going to do around it, I'm going to come up through the back. And for circle patterns, they're fairly predictable. Depending on the size of beads, it's usually 1 in the center and then 7 or 8 around. 6, 7, I'll try 8. Okay. So the reason you have 2 threads is because one is going to be for adding beads and one is going to be for tacking them down. Okay, so I don't need to hold that anymore. What I'm going to do is this, and then I want it to loop around like so. Okay, so it's actually 7 beads is going to work for this, so I don't need that 8th one. Now, that's so bad because the zoom isn't, there we go. That's the closest I'm going to get. And it won't zoom in. Okay. Now you're going to take your second needle and you're going to go and want to come in from the back. And what you're doing is you're trying to get between your second and third bead, that string. So you're coming in from the back, coming up, and you're going to see that thread between the second and third bead. This zoom is horrible. There we go. There we go. And then you're going to go down back through. Now what that's going to do is it's going to hold that thread from your first string in place. If that makes sense. Then you're going to come up behind again between the 4th and 5th bead, and then you're going to tack it, go on the opposite side of the thread to tack it down. Oh, I'm sweating like crazy. Now, my needle's going through really easily. If you were to do this with a beading needle, you're going to find it a lot tougher, like I said, because it's not a glover's needle. And then same thing here. I'm coming in from the back. And then I'm going down. So my first needle is right here. I'm not touching it because that's the one for my beads. Okay. Your second needle is only going to be to tack things down. So now if you look at my, nope. If you look at the back, it's just stitching. You don't need to knot it down until after you're finished with your strings all together. So yeah, front and back, and that's it. So I need to get rid of this 8th bead because I don't need it. And then when I'm done with my row of beads, I'm making a circle. So I want to go through that first bead in the front. And I'm getting my lines crossed already. And when I'm done with this row, I'm going to use, this is the needle that I was using for the beads. I'm going to put it through front to back. And that's going to be it. So these beads for the center of the flowers are tacked down. You don't see any threads on the front. You're going to see everything on the back. Okay. So for my next, I'm going to go around here. I'm not sure which color I'm going to use. I guess it'll have to be white or blue. I think I'll use the blue for that. Coming in from the back, now this is going to be my needle with beads only. The other needle is going to be the one that is sewing and stitching and tacking everything down. Here are my blue. Actually, I'm thinking gold. I'm gonna try gold here and we'll see how it goes. Now, I want to show you guys the diamond pattern I was talking about. In case you're not interested in doing a longer design. Just going to draw it out first. Just trying it out here, guys. Almost done kind of giving you an idea of what a diamond pattern would look like. Okay. So this is if you were to just kind of draw it out to give you an idea of what it's going to look like. And each of these are just one row of beads. The different, like the X's, the blank, and then the dark are the different colors that you're going to use. So you use one row like this, one row like this, and then the next you're going to shift it, and that actually does create a diamond pattern. So I'm going to use a piece of leather to show you what I mean. I'm going to make another vamp. And then it'll be a lot easier as well to show you the 2-needle method if you're having issues with it right now while I'm doing a straight line. Showing people who are just beginning, doing circles looks a little bit more complicated than straight lines. Sorry? Yeah, so that's why I'm gonna do the diamond pattern so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Because I feel like everyone that's on the Zoom too, because you can't zoom in that much, is probably wondering the exact same thing right now. And the freehand, or sorry, the diamond pattern, you can freehand. You don't have to draw anything for it. You can mark your center if you want to, but that's as far as you need to go for it drawing. It's getting small beads. What should you do about blue? And with this diamond pattern, you're going to have plenty of leftover beads because it doesn't need, or it doesn't involve using too many of them. Yes, there it is. Okay. Sorry about that. I should have started with the straight lines to begin with because it would have been a lot easier. It's a lot easier to show. Instead, I got to go straight for this crazy design. Okay. Now you have your vamp. We already know, like I said, you're not going to use this part, the last third or so of it. So when you think about it, you're going to want your diamond to be down here, closer towards the toe. So I'm actually going to start it about here. I'm going to come up from behind with one needle. Okay. About close to the center and a little bit over to the right. Now, when I come up, this is going to be my needle for beads only. So keeping in with this diamond pattern, I'm actually going to do 4 colors instead of 3. So it's just going to add an extra row here. So I'm going to have, let's see, I'll do blue, red, white, and black. Oh, dumped a little too many here. Oh, that's too many already done. I'm making a huge mess here, Andrea. And blue. So I want blue on the outside of my diamond. So all I'm going to do is add 2 blue beads. That's it. Okay. And then I'll do black, 2 black beads. Then I want 2 white beads. And then my center is going to be red. So I'm going to do 2 red beads. Now we're going to work backwards here. That's what my diamond's going to look like. So I'm going to do 2 white again, 2 black, and then 2 blue. Okay. So when I'm finished, this is what it looks like. So you can see the red is the center of the diamond, the blue is going to be on the outside. I'm going to pull those all the way to the end of the string, and I'm putting this needle down. I do not need it. Now I want these to be straight this way, and I'm holding it down like this. Okay. I'm going to take my second needle. Hopefully I don't grab the first one again. There you are. Okay. And this is a lot easier to show this part about the tacking down too. You see between the blue and the black, that is where you're going to want to come up with your needle. I usually hold it so that there's only 4 beads like this, and then the rest are tucked here behind. Okay, so I'm going to come up from behind between this blue and black bead with my second needle. Okay, when I come up, what I want to do is get between the blue and black bead on the opposite side of the thread. Okay, so what that's doing is it's tacking it down. So I came up on one side here at the bottom between the blue and the black. I'm going to go down the opposite side of the thread on top of it, and I'm going to go down. Okay, so these 2 beads are now secured. The first 2 blue beads. Okay, I'm going to add 2 more white, and it's going to be the exact same thing. I'm coming up from behind into the paper between the black and white bead. Right there. Oh, this zoom is kind of awful. It's coming between the black and the white, up and the bottom, and then I'm going over top of the thread on the opposite side of it. Okay. And you can't see it, but that's tacking down these beads. These beads aren't going to go anywhere now. I'm doing the same thing with the red. When you're doing straight lines, you can do upwards of every 3rd bead if you want to. If you're doing smaller curves or circles, it's every 2nd bead. Okay, so same thing with the white and the red. I'm coming up between them from the bottom. I'm going over their thread to the top between the same 2 beads. My line isn't very straight here, but that's okay. Then I'm going to add the white, go between the red and white again from the bottom. Going over top between them at the top. Then we're going to do it with the black. Same thing between the white and the black, coming up from the bottom and then going over the top. Let's see if we can get a close-up of this. So you can see where I stitched it. I came up from the bottom and I went over the top. Now when I pull this tight, it's holding that first line in place. And then I'll do it again for the blue. Now, all of my beads have been tacked down now. It's a little crooked, but that's okay, we'll straighten it out. Now I have this left over where I added my beads. Okay. So we're going to figure out where we want it to go. If we want it to go right there. So we're going to put this straight through to the back. So both needles are at the bottom now. And that's what it's going to look like. Mine's not perfectly straight, but it's very, like I said, we'll straighten it out. So that would be my first line. And if you look at the back of your piece, that's what it would look like. Because the one line was just for the beads, these little zigzags are when you were tacking them down. Okay, so that's beading one line. Sorry? Like the center of a flower, that was what I was doing here. You put one, you tack one bead down, and then you curve the other ones around it. So you're wrapping it around.
So do you put all of these kind of in the string and just do?
Yeah, in between each one or each second one. So for this one, for example, I'm hoping it'll zoom in now. You can kind of, there we go. You can kind of see how that was done. It just, I put the one bead in the, I pulled it, sorry, I came from the bottom, put one bead, tacked it down, and went through the back. Then I came back up beside it, added beads, and then came around. It's 7 or 8. Yeah, it's this one for these size, it's about 7. But if you're doing a size 11, a lot of times it's 8. So then if I had wanted to do this design, then I would start the outline of my petal, tack that or put that down, and then I would fill it in at that point. So this is the difference with a circle. And then when you're doing it with a straight line, it's like I said, it's a lot easier to see what we're doing. And you can see that these beads aren't really going to go anywhere. They will if you pull them enough because the string's not secure. So for our next row for our diamond, kind of see where it's more in the middle right here. We're going to come up from the bottom right beside where we want that blue bead to sit. Come on. There we go. Right there. We're going to pull that up. And again, whatever string you pull up, this is going to be to add beads. So we're going to do 2 blue again, the exact same thing we did the first time. 2 black. 2 white. 2 red. The other size 1. 2 white. 2 black and 2 blue. Okay. And we're going to pull these all the way up. And there is the center of our diamond. Okay, so all we're doing is the exact same thing we were doing before. The needle where you put the beads on stays down, and you're going to pick up your 1 to sew. You go back here, come up. Oh, and I'm getting tangled. Second time I've stabbed myself. Now we're going to go down. Add 2 beads, do it again. Mine isn't quite lining up 100%. Come back up on the one side, go over. See if I can get you better zoom here. There we go. And then we're going down on the opposite side of the thread. And all that's doing is tacking them down. Now, this is going to be the homework for the next day and a half until we do our next class. So you guys can have a break. As long as you're understanding how to tack down the beads, then you're good to go. And then it goes down. If you're finding that your leather isn't cooperating for any reason, if it's feeling too floppy, if it's just not stabilizing enough, add a second piece of paper or use a very thin piece of cardboard on the back of your design, and it'll hold it and secure it a little bit better than just a piece of paper. And then this goes down wherever I want the end of it to be. So those are our first two lines in our diamond pattern. Now, when you move over, you can move left, you can move right, whichever you want to. You're going to come up here. Oh, there we go. Here is where you want the next row of beads. Is between the blue and the black. You're going to come up. And now we're going to shift and do 2 blue, 2 black, and 2 white. And this is a really good, it's a very basic, very traditional pattern. And if you don't want to spend a lot of time this weekend doing beadwork, this is going to be your quickest way out of it. Okay, so this is what my next row looks like for colors. And this is where I'm putting it. So everything got shifted over. And you can see that's where my next row is going. So I put down the thread that has the beads, and I'm picking up the other one to tack them down. Come up between the blue and the black, and like I said, we shifted it over just one, or sorry, 2 beads. And tap it down. Round back, up. Tap down. Back up. And up. Then we're going to put it down to the back. See, and that's where you're starting to see your pattern form. So again, we're going to come up from the back where we want the next row of beads and do it again. So I'm just going to finish this one side here to show you half of the diamond. And then all you have to do is repeat it on the other side. Back. And this is going to be the second one. Go over the thread and down. Up from the back. Okay, and back. Back. Over and down. I apologize if you poked yourself a million times by now. From the back. Over and down.
It's great. It's hard to keep the line straight.
Now the center of the circle is small, so we're just full length around. We're tight.
Okay, so there's our next row. Our next one again, we're going to go between the blue and the black, and then we're going to start again. This time we're only going to have blue and black on here. So we're going to do 2 blue. And 2 black. Not like that, dude. Not nice, just going here. And 2 flip. So this is row number 3. Every time we do another row, we're eliminating another color. Okay. Take my- Come from the back and tuck down that page. And from the back and tuck it down. And tuck this down. Okay, figure out where we want our next row to be. Two black and 2 blue. There's not there, so. And then of course, for our last row, for this particular pattern, seems to have shifted over to the side a little bit. So when I finish this, it may not be 100% centered, that's fine. So for our last row here, for this particular pattern, we're going to come up again, and we're just going to do 2 blue, and then we are done. And these ones you don't need to tack down because they're only doing 2. There we go. One more time. Add 2 blue. If they're not sitting properly, you can put a tack down in the middle of them. Okay, so there is your diamond. Half of it anyway. So, and these are all just straight lines. This is the quickest way, or a very quick pattern if you just wanted something quick. So all you're going to do here is the exact same thing you did here. So you're going to just start with the 2 blue, black, white, black, blue here, and then these here, and then the 2 blue there, and that's it. All right. Any questions before we wrap up today? How do I find out about questions? How do I find out about questions or anything?
Well, we'll have, hopefully that it will be the recording.
Yeah.
And then people will have backup.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and finish this weekend. And then I'll show you after it's done, kind of how it's gonna look. I'm gonna take this home with me. And then I'll also finish this one so that you can kind of see what it ends up being. But this is, again, the simplest. It's a diamond pattern. If you have 4 or 5 colors, you repeat the exact same pattern all the way through, and then you're just gonna do it to the side. So this is your center. These two are your center. So you don't need to repeat the red. Again, you start here and accept mirror image on the other side. Okay, and then if you're doing a smaller, more intricate design, you can print out, like I said, clip art anywhere and just put it on here and it's going to be fine. Just make sure that your design isn't too small for your bead width, because otherwise you're just not going to be able to do those fine details that you want. So, all right. Where do I find questions or anything? Okay. I think the other one's already
The alarm
finished,
bell.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Marilyn's probably on the road, Lorraine? Like I said, we'll have the recording should be out late tonight. So you can backtrack for any I don't know, reference later on. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you back here Sunday, 2:30.
Yeah.
And for anyone on Zoom, same link. Okay, bye, ladies. On Zoom.